On this episode, we talk about college, the Olympics, and mental toughness. Welcome to another episode of Inside the League. I have a super important guest with me here today, Bailey Moody, who is a medalist for the Olympics, the Paralympics, and I'm super excited to have her on. Welcome, Bailey.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited to talk about your journey and the Olympics because it's something that you don't really hear very often. So talk a little bit about your road to the Olympics and how you got to where you are today.
So I actually started my Paralympic journey when I was about 15 years old. I got the opportunity to go to a national team development camp in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center, at the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center. And I was kind of just trying to get my feet in the water, trying to get kind of in the pool of athletes. And the coach comes up to me at the end of the development camp and he's like, "Hey, I want you to come try out for the team in January."
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh, he just wants me to like see the competition that I'm going to be going up against." Not expecting anything to happen, really, just expecting to go and kind of get my butt kicked. Um, I go to the tryout camp and I end up making the team in 2018 as a 16-year-old to go to the World Championships, which would be happening that next end of summer.
Wow.
How my whole Paralympic journey started. Ever since then, I've been on a team. I medaled with my team. We got a bronze medal at the Tokyo 2020 Paralympics, which were in 2021. And then ever since then, I've just been trying out for the team. I think so. This next coming season, we're about to start our selection process for what would be the Paralympic qualifiers, and then the 2024 Paralympics would be the year after that. So things are flying. I've already been through an entire cycle, and it just has flown by.
Wow, that's amazing. First of all, the amount of skill you have to have, and for you to not necessarily walk into it, but have so much skill to be able to compete at that level so young is super impressive. Talk a little bit about how did you even know there was a training or a development camp that happened? How did you find out about that?
So I started getting really involved in adapted athletics and para athletics when I was in the 7th grade. I lost my leg to cancer when I was in the 4th grade when I was 10. So I was super active. I've been super active my whole life. Basketball's always been my first love. And so once I started getting involved in para athletics, I started becoming aware of that community a little bit more. I watched the Rio Olympics and Paralympics. I watched the women's wheelchair basketball team in Rio win gold, and kind of when I watched them win gold, I started to think, this is kind of something that I think I want to try to do. I didn't think it would happen as quickly as it happened, as far as getting on the team and getting to travel and winning a medal, but it's been a dream and goal of mine since I started playing wheelchair basketball.
That's amazing. And representation matters for you to be able to see it and then yourself become it is super cool. So, what was your process like in terms of from going to the development camp to actually being there at the limits? What were some things that you had no idea of before before you hopped into this process, and were kind of surprised to learn along the way?
I think a lot of it was me just being so giddy and having this just energy about me, this young energy of just waiting for the next thing to happen and just like being down for anything. I think that is one of the things that like I was always ready for the next thing, and I had no idea what the next thing was, but like I wanted to I wanted to have that experience. I wanted to do that thing and just kind of like being along for the ride. So I literally every year I would go into the tournament, the travel tournament we would go to, and have no expectations and just be like, let's just see what happens. A lot of my older teammates, they that had experienced it before, they would be like, this is the coolest thing that you're gonna see here, or like this thing about the Paralympics is my favorite, or like they just had such a good time watching me and watching some of my other younger teammates experience it for the first time and them
Yeah.
remembering what it was like, because you really have no idea. You kind of just have to soak in as much as you can.
So it sounds like that saying is true about like you only get one first time, so really try try to
Absolutely.
enjoy it. What's something that was kind of unexpected that you encountered on your journey, and that maybe your other teammates didn't necessarily warn you about?
I think so. My journey very heavily was during the pandemic. So my Paralympic journey was kind of something that nobody else had ever experienced it the way that they did it. We didn't have any fans. The dining halls had plexiglass everywhere. There was just a lot of things that were not typical of a Paralympic experience. And so I think experiencing that history and experiencing it in that way is going to then, I mean, you said you don't really ever have a first time to experience something. I think having that experience, if I end up at the next Paralympics, I think it would almost be like a first time again because of how COVID affected things. So it
Yeah.
was a very unique first couple of years of my national team career for sure.
So what does training look like for you once you come out of a cycle and you kind of start over, right? Every 4 years, so to speak. What does that look like for you, that preparation in order to get ready for the next time?
Yeah, so basically I play college basketball too, so I play at the University of Alabama as well, and how our seasons kind of line up is we have our college season that runs like October, November to March. And then we have national team season, which runs about April to November ish, sometimes September to November ish. So the seasons overlap. So I'm basically training all the time. I'm either training for college or I'm training for USA. So my training regimen kind of stays kind of the same.
Okay.
I'm training just with my team at Alabama when I'm at school, and then a lot of my training is by myself when I'm home for the summer. And then we meet centrally throughout from the April to whenever our tournament is, that time range. We'll meet centrally as a USA team to train for about 3 or 4 days, maybe 5. We'll also travel to some friendlies periodically, but a lot of it is a decentralized training program while we're in season.
So did your training change at all, kind of going from high school to college and then having to incorporate training because your season does overlap with the USA team? Did anything change or did you have to make transitions in terms of how your training happened, juggling classes at the same time, what your schedule is like? How did you figure out the pieces to all those puzzles?
I always tell people that I think training in high school as a para athlete is a lot more difficult than training in college as far as logistics and just how close. In college, you're training with a team. For para athletics in high school, a lot of your training is still decentralized because high schools don't often have teams. So I was playing with a club team that traveled, but my club team was people coming from all over the state of Georgia. So
Got
we
it.
really didn't train together as often as a high school team would train together. So
Mhm.
a lot of my training in high school was still all by myself. However, and also in high school, you have a full day of classes. You have like 7 hours, 8 hours of classes. And then I was trying to either go to the gym at 5 a.m. before school and or go to the gym after school. And so my days were so long versus in college, the gym is 5 minutes from my house. I train with my team at a certain time. I have maybe 2 classes a day. Mondays and Fridays this semester, I don't have any classes. So
Yeah.
there's plenty of flexibility for training and in college that not wasn't necessarily there in high school.
So it sounds like some of the horror stories that you tend to hear about, oh my God, you're not going to have any time in college and all your time is absorbed. Like if you figure it out, if you figure out your schedule, you can avoid some of those pitfalls so that you have some air cover, so to speak, so you can get your training time in so that you can do the things you need to do with your team and still graduate on time. Right?
It's definitely a lot of time management skills, but the flexibility of the time in college is a lot more present than in high school, as far as just what I've experienced. But you have to have good time management because there's a lot of things in college that like can be drawing your attention for
Right,
sure.
right. Talk a little bit about your support network, what it takes for you to be able to train and kind of make that team the first time, make the USA team. Is it just your coaches? Is it your coaches and at the time your parents? Like, how does that support system work for you to even figure out like how to land on the team and then how to get to Tokyo?
It's a group effort. There's no way I could have gotten here without my coaches, my family. The amount of times that I have drug family members to the gym to rebound for me and to help me with my training, like they deserve so much credit too. And my parents for getting me to all of those high school tournaments and getting me all the places I needed to go and to be in order to have the level of training that I needed. It's not ever something that I could have done on my own.
That's amazing. Team effort, kind of on the court and off the court is essential. So, super amazing that you have such a supportive network. What are some things that you think athletes coming behind you really should pay attention to, really need to be aware of that maybe is not talked about that often so that they can be successful as well?
I'm a big so I'm going to school for I'm a psychology major. I'm going to school for sports psychology. I'm very into that side of the game. I think it's kind of it's not really present in younger athletes, and
Mhm.
I have a passion for teaching younger athletes the mental side of the game as well. I think high schoolers really need it, but you don't really get any sports psychology until you go to college. But
Mhm.
if you want to play at any sort of high level, you have to know how to manage that and like have the tools to manage the stress and the workload and the level of pressure that you have on yourself. And I think learning to do that young and learning the tools to do that young and like finding resources in order to do that, whether that's books, videos, there's things that you can be looking for. I think it's important and it can put younger athletes ahead in their game in the future.
What are like one or two resources you recommend in terms of psychology and kind of that mental health, mental awareness, that mental toughness, because it is super competitive. So, what are one or two resources that maybe you've used in your learnings that you think would be helpful to younger athletes?
I think so finding a sports psychologist, not necessarily to one to see as a younger athlete, but maybe finding one online that is very prominent on social media. The one that we use for Alabama is Dr. Brett McCabe. He's pretty present in his social media just to like he gives good tools and good tips. There's also podcasts out there all over the place that talk about sports psychology and give athletes tips on what they're supposed to be doing. But yeah, little things that can just put you ahead.
Cool. And so, my last question for you is in your trek to getting to the Olympics, are there sponsors that you had to figure out how to get, or does that come with the team? How do younger athletes kind of get the support and sometimes financial support in order to be able to get to that level and compete?
Um, yeah, so I think as far as like I think building your presence on social media is important. I think taking every opportunity that comes to you and being willing to build connections and talk to people is also important. I think whenever you get the opportunity to talk to someone or meet someone or speak to someone or do something that puts your name out there a little bit more is super important because the more people that you know and the more connections that you have, the more later it can benefit you.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Like actually building that network throughout time, not just for the immediate what could happen, but just so that you have more connections is super important. Billy, tell everyone where they can find you and what you're up to next.
So I'm right now in the heat of my college season. So you can follow me on Instagram at the real Bailey Moody. I post updates there. You can kind of follow my USA journey, my college journey there. Also, as far as my Bama season goes, if you go to Alabama Adapted on Instagram, they live stream games, they post schedules, they post pictures. So you can follow my Bama team as well outside of the USA realm. But most of the USA following would be through my Instagram page.
Cool. Well, I can't wait to check out your next game. So I'm definitely going to follow. Thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it. I appreciate the what you represent and how motivating you are. And I know there are going to be athletes that are watching you and are rooting for you and that you inspire. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you for having me.